Hi, you're looking at the work that we did on building our bridge. So this is a series of still photographs that we have. At the time we didn't have a video up and running. We were having lots of trouble with equipment, so we never got around to that. But we took lots of still photographs that we put on my Facebook page, terence.flannery@gmail.com, and you can find lots of stuff on there about the bridge. But this is a step-by-step showing so that you can see how the bridge evolved. The first shot that you saw was of me riding my bike across the creek as it was. The creek used to flood very heavily every time that the rains came, because all of the rice fields that tear away and above the what is now the bridge drain into that creek, so the flooding was heavy. There are some pictures there of a heavy rainfall while we were in the process of laying the groundwork for the bridge. We laid a heavy concrete pad down that the bridge was going to be supported on, and you can see the rebar cages that come up from that pad stone, and all of the supports, the main supports, they kind of look like canoes, and they're pointed at one end. The obvious reason for that, if you've ever walked across any bridges and you look at especially the older bridges which have the main supports being sunk into the water, you can see that the idea of pointing the front is so that the force of the oncoming water, especially when it gets very powerful, it actually dissipates the energy against the bridge. Bridge doesn't suffer quite so much stress, and therefore it's stronger. Now you'll see that there are supporting walls at each end. All of the walls, all of the what I call, let's call them canoes, all of the canoe supports are made in cement hollow blocks, but then after that they are filled with concrete and rebar. The rebar comes up about 3 feet into the top of the bridge itself. So when the bridge was finished, you can see the road part of the bridge has these supports coming up, and they were the basis for actually anchoring the guardrail, which we didn't want to we could have just put concrete blocks sitting on the top of the roadway. Didn't want to do that. We put a guardrail which is actually into those pillars that you can see. That's all anchored into the base support pad stone of concrete and stone. So we feel that the bridge is actually under-designed and overbuilt. It won't be carrying any great weight. We have a tiny truck which you can actually see in one of the shots, payload of about 650 pounds, tiny little thing, but it's a four-wheel drive and it gets us to and fro. That's the main thing, that it had to be four-wheel drive. So you can see that the main part of the work was done by 3 men who did all of the work. When I designed the bridge, I drew up the designs, and then I sat down with my brother-in-law Timio, who is an expert. He is a great builder, great carpenter, able to conceptualize and visualize designs from scratch. He can build a house, as he did for a friend of mine, and all of the design aspects are all in his head. Just the kind of guy that I like to deal with. So we sat down and we worked out the design aspects, how much rebar, how big the rebar would be, where it would go, how many supports we'd need. All of these things we just to and fro'd in discussion, brainstormed the whole thing. You see that the top is actually overbuilt with hundreds of feet of rebar, much the same as a commercial bridge. There is a bridge being built between here where we are and Taliban, and the design is pretty much like we've got here, except that our spans are only probably at most maybe 5 feet between. So unsupported or only supported by the internal rebar is only about a 4 feet span. Very much overbuilt. You can see coming up through those, shall we call them canoes, the canoe supports are, as I say, filled with concrete, but they have coming up through them the advancing, the advanced supports, which are like square cages coming up, and they anchor in the guardrails. So everything comes right down to basics. There's one place there where you can see that we used all of these scaffolding, shall we call it, that supported the road and the rebar. All of that concrete work was supported by natural materials, culled by my brother-in-law, my other brother-in-law, Manorado. Took all of those pieces of wood and took them from surrounding trees. Now you can see some nice shots there of the canoe supports. Once the canoe supports were made in hollow block and filled with concrete, they were nicely smooth rendered by my brother-in-law Timio. Very, very good work, all nicely done, and all for a purpose, because the less you can make the force of the water on those supports, the better. And that includes streamlining them so that the actual friction of passing water is at a minimum. All to the better once that flood water comes. I have to say that the flood water is not something that happens every day, every week. It happens in the heavy rains, and that's when the bridge will have to do its job. In putting in the bridge, we raised the road about another 3 to 4 feet. So that's raised it way above the level of floodwater coming in. Now, what I'm looking at right now, and this description is not actually in sync with the pictures as you will see them, but I am looking at all of the rebar that went in, all boxed and wired together, all before the concrete was ready to go in, and onto a platform of, what you're looking at is sheets of bamboo that's woven together and is usually used for a wall covering. In this case, it was much cheaper to use that than to use plywood. Plywood would have been probably 3 times the cost. That was very important for us, so that's what we used, and it did the job very, very well. Actually, recently we've started taking out that scaffolding, and that woven bamboo panels have actually come away in one piece. We'll be able to recycle them on my workshop, which is another video. So what we're looking at now is we're looking at continuing the work on the bridge and on the road, and we're going to take it that the road is the approach into the bridge and the approach from the house into the bridge. We need more donations, and you can find us for this purpose on the internet. GoFundMe, Island Hilltop Community by Terence Flannery, and you can see us there, and you can see our story. Right now we're looking at the pillars, which for a final touch that made it a family project, we put all the names of everyone who was concerned. Manorado and everyone, Lena, my sister-in-law, children, my wife, me, Timio, and this bridge will be named for my mother-in-law, Maxima. But probably we'll call it Nanai's Bridge, because Nanai is the name given to mother. Nanai is Visayan for mother, and my mother-in-law, for some reason, is mother to everyone. So now that we're approaching the end of these pictures, you'll see some of the finished bridge and workers that were involved in it. We thank you for looking, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again on our videos. Bye for now.